I mean, I don't want to get too much into that conversation, which is a big thing, the cultural aspect, the systemic aspect. But like the immediate experience is I'm working so hard in therapy, healing my trauma to kind of please my wife and to connect her in the level that she wants me. And now she is complaining about that, right? And the reality is that most of the time, these relationships have been going for years and years and years. And it has been the wife nagging the husband for not being emotionally intelligent.
Yeah.
And now he's changing. But the entire relationship has to shift to accept this new kind of man, right? But I think once they can process that, you see relationships of people like they are 50, 60-year-old changing absolutely, like it's a 180 degrees shift. They connect more, they talk more, they support each other more suddenly. And the woman feels safer now with a man who is not emotionally absent.
I was just going to ask you this question because we're two therapists having this conversation, which is quite interesting to me. When there is this shift in the man, let's just say it's a macho man in a relationship that decides to be emotionally connected, goes through therapy, learns emotional intelligence to a certain extent, and is now emotionally available. What are the qualities that he's going to provide in the relationship from this emotional intelligence versus the absence?
Well, what happens when a woman, because men and women, we are equally products of the same system, right? So if you're going to say that the man was a product of a machista society, right, like patriarchal society, then women are too, right? It's not about the sex or we are all in different ways shaped and let's call it oppressed or whatever for by the same system. So if the woman wants to connect emotionally, usually, right, in these traditional families, we are talking like Armenian families, Middle Eastern families, right, Latino families sometimes, many times, they're not gonna, their go-to person is not their partner. Their go-to person is mom, sister, friends. Why? Because they talk to their husband and the husband is like, I don't have time for this, or right, like what do you want me to do with this? I don't know how to empathize with you.
Oh, that's a big word.
Yeah, because I can. Well, maybe they can see the pain, but I would say like there are equal responsibilities there, where the emotional unavailability of the man makes a woman choose other resources, and that splits the relationship.
Yes, I agree with you on that piece.
Right, and they become more distant, more
Yes.
strangers.
They do. Advice from other people can definitely, tarnish the relationship because
Yeah.
not everyone's advice works for your relationship.
Not even advice, just listening to each other.
Absolutely.
Right?
It's
That's
so
a big
important.
piece.
It is. So when men are more emotionally available, yes, I do see a big shift in the next the two generations, our generation and the next generation. Vulnerability is not as respected. Women want the more macho man, but now the macho men are complaining that no, like we want to be more vulnerable because our mental health matters too.
Okay. I think some women want the macho.
Not all. We're not generalizing. Yeah.
Some women want that, perhaps, again, because they are also a byproduct of certain values, certain things, right? And to be clear, when I'm talking about these cultural things, or ideological, I think there's like a misunderstanding of, we can totally understand that and free ourselves or whatever. This is what our unconscious is. A woman, and I have met these kind of people in my life, a very dear friend of mine, she's a feminist activist. She's very, very smart, very bright person. And yet for some reason, she chooses very oppressive partners constantly. Cognitively, she knows it's a problem.
But unconsciously.
Unconsciously, she's keep choosing for that, right? But going back to your question of what happens if the person is the man is becoming more vulnerable, and the woman don't like that.
Because there's a different level of vulnerability, Tigran, you know?
Hmm.
I feel like it's different because it's so easy, not for every man. Again, we're not generalizing, right? But when people tend to be a little bit more vulnerable, they can fall into that victim chair really quickly from the vulnerability, I feel like.
Yeah.
And so I feel like there has to be like a good balance, because essentially too, like being conservative, but I'm also very mindful. Like I feel like, yeah, women's friendship is so important because it's very health based, right? Like we need women, when they talk to each other face to face, eye to eye contact. Some men can communicate with each other just with a beer bottle and just looking elsewhere, right? Like women's friendships are more health. I feel like it's more for health purposes. Men can be just like conversational, but vulnerability, I feel like I don't know. This is just my personal perspective. I feel like vulnerability can sometimes tarnish a man's manhood in a way. If it's not into a more like victim state versus, because it can take away a lot of the true nature of a man.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, you're using strong words.
Yeah.
True nature of a man.
Yeah. Because the nature of a man, from my perspective, is to be that provider, right?